Point of the video: how much do video games cost? Back in my day, video games used to cost $60 standard. Back then, the value proposition was different. For $60, you receive a physical copy of the game you paid for, and it's ready for recreational use. Sadly, the state of gaming has changed so dramatically that the value proposition of modern games feel like a scam. So why do games cost more despite them theoretically being the most accessible they've been out of all time? Video games no longer need any type of physical distributions. We are basically living at the start of the age of streaming. So why is it that now in the future are games getting more expensive? Shouldn't the graph be moving backwards? Well, it just so happens to be the most consumer unfriendly time to be a video game enjoyer. We are living in an era where every single advancement in technology is somehow used against us instead of for our benefit. In short, modern games cost a lot and provide very little. Me personally, I think the market has to recorrect itself soon. Market crash. Crimes of passion are common, and fandom just so happens to be passion for a collective body of work. We live in the age of the corporate IP, where out-of-touch elites control most of gaming's best touchstones of imagination when it comes to this medium. Sadly, they waste potential because they don't know where art begins and sales end. As gaming gets more accessible, developers of these corporate IPs become innovators and not advancing the artistic integrity of the industry, but instead they innovate in anti-consumer practices, discovering new different ways of giving you less for more. What's clear is that in the age of ultimate access, the only way to make money is to charge you for that access, as gaming as the rising dominant culture becomes a very lucrative thing, especially as it gains more popularity, sort of transcending the original gaming culture it was shepherded by. Modern gaming became the cool kids club, and access to that club is going to cost you. What sucks is that in my personal view, culture works best when it's accessible to everybody, not just the ones that can afford it, because that limits the potential growth for that culture. So how much should that culture cost, and how much should video games cost in general? In theory, digital distribution should make games cheaper. When Sony introduced the PlayStation with CD technology, making games more affordable to produce, this innovation forced other companies to follow suit, driving down costs across the industry. As a result, game prices became more competitive and consumers benefited from the lower prices. For a long time, this was a norm. Games were relatively affordable and the industry seemed to prioritize consumer value. However, things started to change. Modern games often come $60 or more, despite digital distribution being cheaper. This shift highlights the industry's focus on profit over consumer value. The contrast between then and now is shocking. In the past, technological advancements led to lower prices, but today companies seem to use new technologies as an excuse to raise prices, leaving consumers to suffer. I was probably enjoying this business norm for most of my upbringing, not noticing that I was basically enjoying a great era back in my day, because now as technology lowers distribution costs, companies keep inflating prices, squeezing the consumer. And before the PS1, we had a similar situation where gaming prices weren't set at $60. But now the value proposition has changed so much, and not even for the better, or at least not for the better of the consumer. Culture is tied to good value proposition, and for most of my life I was able to enjoy this new industry standard. I'm sure most people watching did too. What's interesting about this period is that thanks to Sony's developing better technology, they were able to provide a cheaper product with similar quality, forcing everybody else to follow their lead because they would make distribution cheaper. Gaming is getting too expensive, and according to me, no longer justifies that price, which doesn't just make this a creative problem but a financial one. Despite the cost of distribution not mattering anymore, let's face it, video games find themselves replacing films and TV shows as the pinnacle of entertainment in popular culture, collectively making more money, and it has dethroned other forms of entertainment in the mainstream culture. Gaming is a culture unto itself, and behind culture, there's capital to be extracted from it. The question is, what's the right amount? I personally feel like developers are starting to notice and leverage the cultural importance of games in an age where physical restrictions are very little and developers start to make their own. When physical limitations stop mattering, only demand does, and that demand is based on the culture. Corporations want to take their time and carefully use the control they've been slowly developing to get all of our money. Sure, graphics are the most realistic and dynamic there have ever been, but most of the advancements are used to strip back control over ownership when they can just as easily be used for our benefit, where games aren't art anymore. And despite the massive advancements we had in the last few years, all this computing power is being wasted on artistic houses of cards. Gaming is getting too, according to me, no longer justifies the Halloween value, which just doesn't make this a creative problem but a financial one. The original PlayStation was the first console to offering significant improvement over earlier consoles. The use of the CD-ROMs allowed for larger and more complex games, and that led to a strong game library with iconic titles. Games like Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, and Tomb Raider, they became synonymous with the PlayStation, and they attracted a wide audience. And what was clear from that is that upon entering the market, direct competition and the birth of a new competitor had the effects of benefiting the consumer. Nintendo taking us back to the time where games are around $80 to $90, breaking the standardization that the PS1 had set all the way back, bothers me personally, especially seeing the fact that innovation hasn't been used to help the consumer at all, only to abuse them. The video game industry has to crash. We're stuck in a bad situation, slowly getting worse, like the boiling frog analogy. If we're heading towards a future where we don't own our games, a monthly subscription of $20 seems fair. But companies want to maximize profit while consumers want access to games. Ideally, games would be free, serving consumers' interests. However, the gaming industry prioritizes its bottom line. The more we pay, the better for the companies. It's clear that they're taking advantage of our willingness to pay for something that we value, exploiting the balancing between cost and worth. Video games should look to be more consumer friendly, so that people are allowed to incorporate cool games into the culture. Video games enable the video game culture to happen, as the more people that have games, the more that we care to be involved in the conversations. Our culture is based around the existence of accessible games, and anti-consumer practices only serve to limit the spread of video game culture in order to monetize it. Sadly for developers, the price is part of how accessible a game is. And like everything, if kids can't get into it because they can't afford $90 games, then they won't integrate it into the culture. Hollow Knight is $15, and that's why everybody's played and references it. Now we're seeing physical games with digital restrictions. Are we really living in a time where we have to make our own imposed limitations revolving solely around monetary reasons? The gaming community's expectations and cultural norms play a significant role in shaping game prices, and players often expect a certain level of quality and context for a given price point. Ultimately, the price of a video game should reflect its value proposition, production costs, and target audience's expectations. The sentiment of modern games feel like a scam resonates with many players, despite that being more accessible than ever, with digital distribution eliminating the costs and game prices continue to rise. This disparity highlights the industry's focus on profit over consumer value. The video game industry has replaced films as a dominant force in popular culture, and this newfound popularity has to increase revenue, but also to price hikes. The industry's growth has come at the expense of consumers who are now shouldering the burden of higher costs. The video game industry's current practices seem to prioritize profit over consumer interest, and this era of technological advancements has periodically led to a less consumer-friendly market. This is why many consider the value proposition of modern games a scam. As the game industry continues to grow in popularity and in revenue, it's essential to reevaluate its business practices and consider the impact on consumers. A more balanced approach prioritizing both profit and consumer value is necessary to restore trust and ensure a sustainable future for the industry. If nothing happens soon, the market will be forced to correct itself. We live in an anti-consumer era. In the past, gaming's limitations fostered creativity due to technological constraints, and now companies have too much control over the experience and numerous ways to monetize that experience. Video games should be valued based on their worth, and consumers need to dictate the industry's direction. We have to vote with our wallets, demanding fair practices and prices that reflect the value we expect. So how much should a video game cost? Only what you're willing to pay for it. So have some self-respect and don't sell yourself short. Demand more and maybe you'll get it. But hey, those are all for my thoughts, and if you liked the video, like and subscribe. If not, thank you for watching and stay safe.